This one's going to be kind of short, that's why we're just going to be sitting on the home screen here. But the upside to that is you can see exactly when I'm recording it. Hey, it's me while editing this. I usually don't pop into here, I usually just cut out the dead space. But if you could either, you only have to do one of these for me, not look at how long this video is, or if you're gonna look at how long this video is, just ignore what I just said about this one not being too long. Could you do that for me? Thanks. I don't make build guides, so this doesn't really matter for me as much, but I still play Path of Exile, so in a way it does. I've seen a lot of discussion online recently about paywalling build guides. Now, to be fair, I haven't actually seen anyone say that they're going to paywall build guides. I've just seen a lot of people say that doing so would be stupid, which I agree with. You gotta be a fucking idiot to paywall build guides, especially in a Path of Exile game. I guess there are two of them. That kind of makes sense. This is not scripted, could you tell? But I've seen a lot of people say that, you know, they won't paywall build guides, and I think that's good. I think that paywalling build guides in Path of Exile, first of all, I think it's bad in every game, but Path of Exile is something I can speak to, because despite the complexity of Path of Exile builds, if you share even just the skill setup that you're using, because you're going to have to share something, even if you're paywalling your builds, the way you would get people to pay is by advertising your builds. So unless you're just advertising them as like nothing, like if you're just like, hey, this is a, let me think of a skill, this is a Flicker Strike build that can do all content, that doesn't give people enough to be willing to pay for your build. If we're assuming this is even a good idea in the first place, it's not. So you're gonna have to show off something. And I feel like the Path of Exile community is good enough, even with the complexity of builds, like I was saying, that if you show off just your skill screen, like if you just press G in Path of Exile 2, it pops up your skill screen, people are going to be able to really easily recreate your build from just that. So people who are dumb enough to want to try and charge for their builds are going to have to try and find the proper overlap between showing off enough of their build that people are willing to pay for it and hiding enough of their build that people can't just recreate it without paying them, which I think is going to be extremely tough for them to do, which is good, because why are you paywalling build guides in Path of Exile? Why are you paywalling build guides in any game, but especially Path of Exile? And now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that there's something to be said about people being properly compensated for the work that they put in to just about anything, which in this case would be putting the work into build guides, you know, doing the research of all the mechanics that would go into making it good, doing the testing to make sure everything feels right, even just the work of writing it up, of just like writing up the build guide, especially when it comes to, you know, adding like notes into a .build file, which is going to be a new thing, but adding in those notes to let people know what they can do, what they can look for in a slot, because I've seen so many people who have trouble with following build guides because they just like open up the POB and they're like, okay, this is the exact item that I need. So they'll try to get, you know, for example, even if their build, because of the gear they have, doesn't need it, well, the POB says the boots need fire res, so I've got to get fire res on my boots, when that's, you know, your build is already capped on res from your other gear, so you don't need, you can use that suffix. Point is, I think there is benefit to compensating people for their work because it keeps them making that work. However, and I gotta try to say this without being rude, without sounding too excessively rude, I'll say. You're gonna see a cut in this timer because of how long it's gonna take me to figure out how to word this without making myself sound like more of an asshole. Okay, it didn't actually take that long. Making things, specifically content, for Path of Exile as an entertainer, as a content creator, is a perfectly legitimate way to make a living. It is, you know, difficult, you gotta get lucky, all that, whatever. But it is perfectly legitimate, at least in my eyes. Making build guides for a lot of creators is a big part of that. Because whenever a new league starts, you have, I don't want to say a bunch of easy videos, but a bunch of videos that you already can easily know the topic of. Good league starting build guides. However, putting an additional paywall on that. Great, now I just gave myself a preamble that sounded nice, but I didn't actually think of how to word this without sounding like an asshole. Putting a paywall on that's fucking stupid. It's not to just repeat myself or make fucking weird noises, I guess. What the fuck was that? But people do deserve to be compensated for their time. But I feel like generally the way that... I was going to say we as a society, but it's not quite at a societal level, but then I was going to say we as a community, but it's a bit bigger than just the Path of Exile community. But like the way that most of the internet has decided to do that, to compensate people for their time in putting together build guides for any game, is with, you know, if you make it, say, a YouTube build guide, watching that. And there could be ads on that video. That's how you would get paid monetarily. That's how you'd be compensated monetarily. But I feel like generally it has been pretty well decided that direct monetary compensation for build guides or crafting guides or stuff of the like is a pure 100% like optional donation-based system. And that's kind of how it should be. Getting your eyes on it, sharing it with other people is the kind of like the default way. It's like, hey, if you want to support this, share it with other people. You know, all the YouTube stuff, oh, they'll, you know, like build, just mixed up 3 sentences. But like, you know, telling people, you know, like, comment, subscribe, share this with all your friends if you think they'd like this build, whatever. I've never made a build guide. I don't know how these things work, especially not in a video. I've watched a couple, but then if you want to like go above and beyond, then, you know, slap a donation link in there, especially if you yourself as the creator are going above and beyond. Let me give you an example. I feel like this right here is the perfect example. Hawks.net. Hawks does Righteous Fire build guides, and a lot more than just build guides. So they also have this button right here, help keep the site running. And if you want to donate to help them maintain the site and to keep being able to make their build guides, that's how you do it. But if you don't want to or aren't in a financial place to be able to, and you really want to do Righteous Fire Chieftain on League Start, in parentheses best, you can just click this right here. It will copy, I believe, the pub.in, and here you go. This is free. If you want to do Righteous, this is Path of Exile 1 as well, by the way. Righteous Fire isn't in PoE 2 yet, maybe ever. Though the staff, but the staff seems weird. Point is, this is all available for free. You are, just by using this, in a way, helping out Hawks, especially if you join their Discord, watch their Twitch stream, watch their YouTube videos. But if you want to help even more directly, there's an option. And I think that's kind of the proper way to do it. Now, there's something to be said, I just noticed this at the bottom, Mobalytics, that there's something to be said about stuff like that, where if you're working for or writing a guide for one of these websites like Mobalytics, like Maxroll, I don't know how that works. I don't write guides for them, but they have a lot of partnered creators that I'd imagine, given the amount of ads on a website like Mobalytics or Maxroll, I would imagine that those people are properly compensated for the time they spend writing their guides, especially because for the few that I've looked at on those sites, they're relatively high quality. Like I said, it's not like I make build guides. If I do in the future, like if the patch notes come out and the martial artist showcase that is comes out and everything looks great, and I'm like, you know what, I want to put a build guide together for this, then it'll be free. There's no way I would charge for that. Like I mentioned earlier, if I release that build guide, the best way that you could help me, if you want to compensate me, is watch the video. My lizard brain likes seeing the numbers go up. It's nice to see that even with these, let's be honest, low effort videos where I just kind of like talk and then cut out the dead space and upload it, it's nice to see that people watch that. It's nice to see people commenting on it, giving me ideas on how to improve stuff. And I think honestly that's one of the bigger issues for build guides. I guess this has turned into a make your own build guide video, because you should make your own build guide and share it with people. As long as you're not advertising it as like the best of the best, make a build guide. Put together a tree, some recommended, pretty basic gear, required uniques if you've got any, and share it with some people. Don't charge them for it. Just share it with some people. And be like, hey, here's my build. What are some ways I could improve this build? Does this build need anything? Anyone have any questions about the build? That's a big one. And that's probably what I'm going to do. Now that I think about it, you've caught me in my real-time thinking trap. Wait, someone's been caught in someone's real-time thinking trap. I'm sure about that for sure. For sure, even. I'm gonna make a build guide. Bug it. I start off most of these videos by saying this is not a build guide. Well, let me tell you something. Probably post patch notes. You're in for a wild intro. But I'll make a build guide. And it'll be shit, because I've never made a build guide before. It'll be unbelievably bad. There will be crazy nonsensical decisions that's like, hey, why did you do this on the tree? Why are you going here? And you know what? That's gonna be good. You wanna know why? Because that's how you learn. This started out about don't monetize your build guides, and I'm not gonna monetize my build guides. Wouldn't you hate to pay even $1 for my build guide? That would suck. You're not gonna have to. In fact, I should probably, I'm not gonna say that. I was gonna say I should probably be paying you for giving me, updates. A lot of people in the comments have been telling me really interesting and smart stuff on how to improve the build that I don't have a guide for yet, but just wait. Patch notes are out in 3 days, I believe, so hopefully we get the martial artist showcase before then. But I believe the patch notes again are coming out on the 21st, so build guide 22nd. We'll see. And then hopefully people in the comments who are smarter than me will look at it and be like, wow, this sucks shit. Here's how you can improve that. And then the league starts on the 29th, so updated build guide on the 28th. We'll see. But if that is what happens, it'll be free. You won't have to pay for it. The beginning of this video was almost structured. It wasn't. I just got lucky with my brain. Anyway. That's my thoughts on that. Charging for build guides directly is kind of stupid. Just put your build guides out there. And if people want to compensate you for your time directly monetarily, give them a way to, but don't make them. Still ain't got an outro. Should work on that. An intro and an outro. Though this is not a build guide. That's pretty good. That's a shit intro. It's goofy. And it gets like, a guaranteed like 3 or 4 people to comment, I love the build guide, which is nice. That's always fun. I love that. Keep that up. That's great. Anyway, next time, depending on what, today's teaser is, maybe even later today. I try to make these one a day as to not overwhelm. And that's, by the way, we're just rambling now. That's only leading up to the launch and maybe for like a week after the launch. The daily video stuff. Leading up to the launch, they're dropping teasers almost every day, though yesterday's teaser was new ExileCon tickets are on sale. I think there was one other thing as well, but I don't remember. But it wasn't like a content teaser. Oh yeah, it was also about like an interview that's happening on the 24th, I believe. So, not really much for me to talk about there, so I get to talk about monetizing builds and why you shouldn't do that. At least, you know, you could monetize your build guides, you know. If you're on YouTube, then, you know, monetize with, you know, the ads, whatever. That's a kind of a cost of doing business. You know, if you know, link to your Twitch channel, link in the description, by the way, then people can come watch, and if they enjoy the content and you have decent emotes, I need to work on that. Now you just caught me rambling. Anyway, the usual. Thanks for watching. Be sure to... I don't know. I was going to say try to think of a funny, goofy thing to say instead of like, comment, subscribe, and I was hoping my brain would just pick it up from there, but the only thing I could think of was be sure to eat hot chili peppers, which makes no fucking sense. Maybe I just need to press the stop recording button.